Hey there, CJ Math students. Welcome to homework number 13, the mock quiz. You're using this homework to help you study and prepare for your quiz tomorrow. Remember also to use the Quizizz link in your email to study for your halves, thirds, fourths, fifths, eighths, tenths, and then go back through your graded work binder and take a look at some of the stuff you've highlighted. Try and recorrect that stuff so you feel super prepared for tomorrow's mid-unit quiz. So, this front page, you'll notice, first of all, no calculators. You won't have a calculator in tomorrow's quiz, but is basically just making sure that we understand some of the vocab from this unit. So number one says, which of the following illustrates the concept of absolute value? So your answer to that one is C. The absolute value of -5 is 5. How do you know this? Well, the absolute value is always the distance from 0, and it's always positive. There's no such thing as negative distance. If you're struggling with this how do I know part, what you can do is you can go back through and you can prove to me why every other answer is not correct. So for A, you could say, wait a second, that's not absolute value, that's the additive inverse. For B, you can say, oh, 3 plus 2 equals 2 plus 3. Oh, that's the commutative property. And for D, you can say, hey, the absolute value of 6 is 6, not -6, because the absolute value is always positive, right? So we did something similar to number 2, which of the following illustrates the concept of the additive inverse? So the additive inverse is just a number and its opposite always equal 0. So that's why B is the correct answer. A number and its opposite added together is always 0. But you could go back through and say, oh, A, anything times 0, 0. Oh, that's the 0 property. 3 plus 2 equals 2 plus 3. Oh, that's the commutative property. Oh, and then a number times 1 will give it itself. That's the identity property. So again, if you're struggling with how do I know, you could always prove to me why the other answers are incorrect. For number 3, which property is shown in the problem below? 3 plus 7 plus -5 equals 3 plus -5 plus 7. Notice how these two numbers, the order flips. Okay, when you think in order, that is the commutative property, right? The order of an addition problem does not matter. That's the commutative property. The associative property would have to do with grouping. The identity property would be either times 1 or plus 0. And the multiplicative inverse, we haven't done this, but it's 2 times 3, 2/3, is the same thing as times its reciprocal or its opposite, just flipped, is always going to give you 1. Okay, so just really understanding what we've learned: commutative property, associative property, additive inverse. Those would be the important ones. So for number 4, it says which property is being used in the second line. You'll notice line 1 is the grouping of 2.5 times -3, and then times -6, and then in line 2, they haven't changed the order of the numbers, they've just shifted the parentheses over. That's the associative property. The grouping, right, does not matter when it comes to an addition or multiplication problem. All right. Number 5 is very straightforward. It says which of the following situations combine to make 0? That's number A, temperature falls 10 degrees and then rises 10 degrees. That's -10 plus 10 is 0, additive inverse, right? Borrowing 20, but then paying back double that amount is not going to get you 0. You could also say 2 times 20. And then a football player losing 5 yards, but then losing another 5 yards. That's also not going to get you to 0. Number 6, it would be helpful to change all these things to decimals. So the absolute value of -7 is 7. -7 1/5 is -7.2. This is why we memorize our halves, thirds, fourths, fifths, eighths, tenths, so we can do this quickly. The absolute value of -5 is 5, and the absolute value of -4 1/2 is -4.5. So then just put them in order from, as it says, greatest to least. So 7 comes first, then 5, then -4.5, then -7.2. The more negative you are, the smaller it is. So almost think of it like debt. You would want to have less money to owe somebody when you're in debt. So the quote-unquote bigger the negative looks, right, the more negative you are, the smaller the number actually is. So if you take a look there, your correct answer in that case is B. Problem 7 and 8, what you're going to do is I'm giving you this picture, and then you're responsible for telling me what the addition problem is and solving it. So this is -3, and this is, you'll notice you move 5 times to the right, so plus 5. So your answer there is -3 plus 5 gives you 2, right? So this entire statement is the answer I'm looking for. Up there is the work I'm looking for. So here, this is, you move 2 spaces left, so that's -2, and then another 2 spaces left, that's -2 more, so -2 plus -2 is -4. So again, your answer's highlighted in green. The rest is very straightforward. You're just giving me the type and showing some work. I've done some work on number 11 and 13 for you, especially on ones where it requires multiple KCC, so take a look at those. Remember, for decimals, line up your decimals, empty spaces, get zeros. For fractions, make sure you have common denominators. And then for your application problems, you're going to have to go through the problem-solving template. Something I have not included on there, but you should definitely take a look at, is homeworks number 9 and number 10, where we gave you really complex problems and you need to use the commutative or associative property to solve them. So like something like 80 plus -42 3/5, or like -5 1/5 plus 3.125 plus 5 1/5, and you need to see the additive inverse there. So problems like that. So study those as well tonight. All right, call me if you have questions.